The town of Red Hollow had a way of deciding a person's worth long before they ever spoke. It sat between dust and sky, a place where rumors traveled faster than horses and judgment settled heavier than the heat. By the time the sun crested the wooden rooftops that morning, everyone already knew what was about to happen, and everyone had already chosen how they felt about it. Silas Crow rode in just after dawn. The sound of his horse's hooves against the packed dirt silenced the street in a way no preacher ever could. Doors creaked open just enough for eyes to peer out. Shopkeepers paused mid-task. Men leaned against posts and pretended not to stare. Women gathered their children closer. Silas Crow didn't need an announcement. His presence was its own declaration. He was a large man, broad through the shoulders, dressed plainly but expensively. His boots were worn but well cared for, his coat dark and heavy, the kind only a man with means could afford to replace whenever he wished. His face was carved from years of sun and responsibility. No softness, no wasted movement. The kind of man who spoke little because he didn't need to speak often. When he did, people listened. He reined his horse in front of the council hall, the building where decisions were made and lives were altered with the scratch of a pen. The elders were already inside. They had been waiting. This wasn't a wedding. No matter how politely they tried to dress it up, there would be no flowers, no music, no celebration. This was a transaction, and everyone knew it. Inside the hall, the air smelled of old wood and ink. Silas removed his gloves slowly, deliberately, as if giving the men across the table time to collect their courage. The elders, 5 of them, gray and thin and nervous, shifted in their chairs. "You came," one of them said, unnecessarily. Silas nodded. "I said I would." There was a pause. Then another man cleared his throat. "You understand the terms." "I understand." Silas replied. "You want her gone." The words hung heavy. No one corrected him. They spoke of practicality, of burden, of how some people simply didn't fit. They spoke of how the town had already done more than enough. They did not speak her name at first, as if naming her might summon guilt. "Ilara," Silas said finally, his voice calm but firm. "Her name is Ilara." One elder winced, another looked down. They had hoped to avoid that. "She's difficult," one muttered. Silas's eyes hardened. "She's poor and alone," another added quickly. "No family, no claim, no dowry." Silas reached into his coat and placed a small leather pouch on the table. The sound of coins inside was unmistakable. The elders fell silent. "This is more than enough," Silas said, "for your trouble and your relief." No one argued. The pouch vanished into waiting hands with almost indecent speed. Paperwork was produced, signatures exchanged. Ink sealed a fate that had been decided long before Ilara ever knew. Outside, she waited. Ilara stood at the edge of the hall, half hidden by the shadow of the building. Her dress was clean but faded, sleeves too short, fabric too thin. She had brushed her hair until her arms ached, tied it back with a ribbon that had once been blue. Her hands were steady, though her stomach churned. She had heard the whispers for weeks. Nobody wants her. She's strange, better for everyone if she's gone. She knew why they were sending her away. She had always known. A girl without protection was a problem. A woman without value was a burden. And a woman with questions. Questions about where she came from, about why her mother had been cast out years ago, was dangerous. When the doors opened, she didn't look up right away. Silas stepped out first. He saw her immediately. She was smaller than he expected, not frail, but compact, like someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible. Her posture was straight, her chin lifted just enough to suggest pride, not defiance. She didn't rush toward him. She didn't curtsy or bow or smile. She waited. Silas studied her the way he studied land, carefully, measuring not what others said about it, but what it actually was. He saw the set of her shoulders, the stillness in her stance. He saw hands that knew work. He saw eyes that did not beg. "You're Ilara," he said. "Yes," she replied, Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "They told you?" he asked. She nodded. "They said I belong to you now." The words were flat, practiced, as if she had rehearsed them to keep from breaking. Silas felt something twist in his chest, sharp and unexpected. He ignored it. "You don't belong to me," he said. "You're coming with me." She looked up then, really looked at him. There was fear there, yes, but also resignation, the kind that comes from learning early that resistance only makes things worse. "I'll do what's required," she said. Silas frowned. "What do you think is required?" Her fingers tightened around the fabric of her dress. "I'll work. I won't cause trouble. I won't ask for more than I earn." A murmur rose from the small crowd that had gathered nearby. Approval, relief. She was making this easy. Silas mounted his horse and extended a hand toward her. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. Her palm was rough, calloused. As he pulled her up onto the saddle behind him, Red Hollow exhaled as one. The problem was leaving. The burden lifted. No one waved goodbye. Clara didn't look back. The road out of town was long and quiet. Dust rose behind them, swallowing the place that had never truly been hers. The wind tugged at her hair and stung her eyes, but she welcomed the pain. It gave her something solid to feel. Silas rode steadily, not rushing, not slowing. He didn't speak, and neither did she. The silence between them was thick, unfamiliar. She wondered what kind of man bought a bride he had never met. She wondered what kind of life waited at the end of this road. She wondered if it would be worse than the one she was leaving behind. What she did not know, what no one in Red Hollow knew, was that this decision, made so easily by so many, would not end quietly. It never did. The ranch appeared at dusk, rising out of the open land like a kingdom carved by stubborn hands. Fences stretched farther than Clara could see, posts lined with wire that caught the dying light. Low hills rolled behind the main house, and beyond them, cattle moved like dark shadows against the earth. It was bigger than anything she had imagined, and quieter too. No neighbors, no watching eyes. Just space. Silas slowed the horse as they approached the house. Gravel crunched beneath hooves. Lanterns glowed faintly near the barn, and somewhere a gate creaked in the wind. The air smelled of hay and leather, and something deeper, ownership, permanence. Clara slid down when Silas dismounted. Her legs wobbled slightly from the long ride, but she steadied herself quickly. She refused to look weak. Weakness had never protected her. A woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was older, hair pulled tight, eyes sharp but not unkind. She paused when she saw Clara, surprise flickering across her face. "This is her?" the woman asked. Silas nodded. "This is Clara. Clara, this is Maeve. She runs the house." Maeve studied her for a long moment. "You look cold," she said finally, not unkindly. "Come inside." Clara hesitated, glancing at Silas as if for permission. He gave a short nod. Inside, the house was warm, solid, built with intention. Thick wooden beams, a wide table scarred by years of use, a fireplace crackling low. It felt lived in, not grand, but strong, the kind of place meant to endure. Maeve handed Clara a shawl without ceremony. "Supper's almost ready." "Thank you," Clara said softly. Silas removed his coat and hung it by the door. He watched Clara from the corner of his eye as she took in the room, every detail absorbed quietly. She didn't marvel. She didn't gape. She looked like someone memorizing an escape route. "Your room's upstairs," Maeve said. "End of the hall." Clara nodded again. "I'll take care of myself." Maeve arched a brow at Silas but said nothing. She returned to the kitchen, leaving the two of them standing in silence. "You'll eat first," Silas said. "Then rest." Clara swallowed. "Yes." They sat across from each other at the long table. Maeve served stew, thick and steaming. Clara waited, hands folded, until Silas picked up his spoon. Habit. Survival. As she ate, Silas noticed the way she held herself. Alert, guarded, like a horse expecting the lash. Every small sound made her eyes flick up. Every pause tightened her shoulders. "You don't have to rush," he said. She froze slightly. then forced herself to slow. I'm used to it. Used to what? Being finished before someone changes their mind. The words landed heavier than she likely intended. Silas said nothing. He had no response that wouldn't sound hollow. After supper, Maeve led Alara upstairs. Silas remained at the table, staring into the empty bowl long after the room had cleared. Something about this arrangement felt wrong in a way he couldn't name. Later, when the house had settled, Silas stood outside Alara's door. He hadn't planned to. His feet had simply carried him there. He knocked once. Yes. Her voice came through the door, tight. He opened it slowly. Alara stood near the bed, hands clasped in front of her. The room was modest but clean, a small window overlooking the fields. There's something we need to settle, Silas said. Her jaw tightened. She nodded. I understand, he frowned. I don't think you do. She took a breath. I know what this is. I know why I'm here. Silas stepped inside and closed the door behind him, not locking it deliberately. He stayed several paces away. This marriage, he said carefully, is not what you think. Her eyes flicked up, confusion flashing briefly before resignation returned. People say many things before they take what they want. The words struck deeper than he expected. I won't touch you, he said bluntly. She stared at him, disbelief cracking her composure. You bought me. I paid the town to stop pretending they were doing you a favor, he replied. That's all. Silence stretched between them. Then why am I here? She asked finally. Silas hesitated. He had asked himself the same question since the moment he'd lifted that veil in his mind, anticipating a stranger. He did not yet know the truth, but something inside him had already begun to stir uneasily. You needed a place, he said. I had one. She searched his face, looking for deception. Finding none confused her more. What do you expect of me? She asked. Nothing, he said, then corrected himself. Work if you want it. Respect. Time for what? I don't know yet. She let out a slow breath, some tension easing from her shoulders though not disappearing entirely. People don't do things for no reason. No, Silas agreed. They don't. He turned to leave, then paused. You're safe here. The door closed softly behind him. Alara sat on the bed long after, staring at the wall. Her heart pounded. Nothing about this made sense. Safety was never offered freely. Kindness always came with a cost. Downstairs, Silas poured himself a drink he didn't want. His reflection in the glass window looked older than he remembered, haunted. He could still hear the echo of her voice. I'll do what's required. Something deep inside him recoiled at the thought that the world had trained her to say that. Outside, the wind moved through the fields, whispering across land that held secrets older than either of them. Neither slept well that night, and though neither yet understood why, both felt the same unsettling truth settle into their bones. This was only the beginning. Morning came quietly to the ranch, pale light slipping through the curtains as if unsure whether it was welcome. Alara woke before the sun had fully risen, her body trained by years of necessity rather than comfort. For a moment she lay still, listening, no shouting, no footsteps approaching with intent, only the distant lowing of cattle and the soft creak of wood as the house settled into itself. She sat up slowly, half expecting the safety of the night to dissolve the moment she moved. It didn't. The room remained unchanged. The door was still unlocked. That alone unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. She dressed quickly and quietly, smoothing her hair back with practiced hands. When she stepped outside, the air was sharp and clean, carrying the smell of damp earth. The sky stretched endlessly above her, vast in a way that made her chest ache. She had never seen so much open land belong to one man. Silas was already awake. She spotted him near the corral, sleeves rolled up, moving with deliberate efficiency as he checked a gate. He hadn't noticed her yet. She paused, unsure whether to announce herself or retreat. In Red Hollow, stepping into a man's work without permission would have earned her sharp words. Or worse. You don't have to hide, Silas said without turning around. She stiffened. I wasn't. He faced her then, studying her expression. "You're up early." "I always am." He nodded, as if that explained everything. "Maeve will have breakfast ready soon." "I can help." He hesitated. "You don't know I want to," she interrupted softly. "It's easier to know where I stand when I'm useful." The honesty of it struck him harder than accusation would have. He gestured toward the house. "Then help Maeve. She'll put you to work." Maeve did not ask questions. She handed Clara bread to knead, vegetables to chop, tasks that required attention, and rewarded it with purpose. Clara worked silently, efficiently, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm. Maeve watched her from time to time, eyes thoughtful. "You don't flinch," Maeve said eventually. Clara's hands stilled. "At what?" "At raised voices, sudden movement." Clara resumed kneading. "I learned when it mattered." Maeve frowned but let the subject drop. Days followed in much the same way. Clara settled into work without complaint, helping in the house, learning the routines of the ranch, tending to tasks others avoided. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were measured. Silas observed from a distance, a growing unease tightening in his chest. There were moments, small, fleeting, that disturbed him. The way she paused when she passed the old cotton wood near the fence, staring at it as if it held memory. The way she hummed under her breath while working in the barn, a tune that tugged at something buried deep inside him. The way her eyes darkened when he mentioned the nearby town, any town. One afternoon, Silas found himself riding toward the far pasture, Clara walking beside him, carrying supplies. He hadn't planned it. He had simply asked, and she had agreed. "You don't have to come," he said after a while. She shrugged lightly. "I like seeing where I am." He glanced at her. "Where you are. In the world." The words lingered between them. They reached the edge of the pasture where the land dipped low, grass swaying in the breeze. Silas dismounted and leaned against the fence, staring out across the hills. Clara stood a few steps away, uncertain. "How old were you when your mother died?" he asked suddenly. She stiffened. "I don't know." He turned toward her. "You don't know? She never told me," Clara said quietly. "She left me when I was very young. I was raised by people who reminded me often that I wasn't theirs." Silas felt a tightening behind his ribs. "Did she ever speak of?" Before, Clara shook her head. "Only once. She said the past was dangerous, that some men had the power to decide who mattered." Her words struck like a blow. "What did she look like?" Silas asked, his voice rougher than intended. Clara hesitated, then answered, "Strong, tired. She had dark hair and eyes like mine." Silas's breath caught. He looked away quickly, heart pounding. Memories surged unbidden, of a woman with dark hair standing at the edge of town, eyes blazing with hurt and accusation. Of his own silence, his cowardice. "What's wrong?" Clara asked. "Nothing," he said too quickly, "just thinking." But the truth was already clawing its way to the surface. That night, Silas didn't sleep. He sat at his desk long after the house had gone quiet, staring at papers he could no longer read. The name he had avoided for years echoed in his mind, the woman he had failed, the town that had erased her. And now this girl, this woman, standing in his house, carrying herself with the same quiet endurance. The realization hit him like a physical blow. By morning, he could no longer deny it. He found Clara in the barn, brushing down a horse with gentle strokes. She looked up when he entered, her expression wary. "We need to talk," he said, her shoulders tensed. "About what?" "About your mother," she swallowed. "You said the past was dangerous." "It is," he replied. "But it's already here." They sat on overturned crates, the barn quiet except for the soft rustle of hay. Silas took a breath, then another. "There was a woman," he began, "years ago. She was cast out of Red Hollow, accused of things she didn't do. I knew her." Clara listened, face unreadable. "She was alone," he continued, "and I let her be." The words tasted like ash. "She was pregnant," Clara said softly. Silas closed his eyes. "Yes." Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "You're saying?" Clara's voice faltered for the first time since he'd met her. "I believe she was your mother," Silas said, "and that makes me." He couldn't finish. Clara stood abruptly, stepping back as if the ground beneath her had shifted. "No," she whispered, "that's not possible." "I've done the math," he said hoarsely. "Your age, the timing, your face." She shook her head, breathing hard. "You bought me." "I didn't know," he said quickly. "If I had, but you did." She snapped, anger flashing through her shock. "You paid for me like they did. You signed papers." Silas rose slowly. "I will tear them up. They mean nothing. They mean everything," Clara said bitterly. "They prove what people think I am." Silas stepped closer, then stopped himself. "I failed her," he said, "and I failed you." Her eyes burned. "You don't get to claim me now, not after all this." "I'm not claiming," he said. "I'm confessing." She laughed sharply, a sound edged with pain. "Confessions don't change what was taken." "No," he agreed. "But they are a start." Clara turned away, gripping the edge of a stall to steady herself. Her world had tilted violently, truths colliding with lies she had built her life upon. "Why didn't she tell me?" she asked quietly. Silas swallowed. "Because she didn't want you carrying her shame." Clara wiped at her eyes angrily. "Then don't put it on me now." He nodded, accepting the rebuke. "You're right." They stood there, separated by more than distance. "I don't know what this makes us," Clara said. "Neither do I," Silas replied. "But you have a choice now, more than you ever did before." She looked at him then, really looked at him, seeing not the powerful rancher, not the man who had bought her, but a broken one, standing in the wreckage of his own making. "I need time," she said. "You can have all of it," he answered. As she walked away, Silas felt the weight of years settle fully onto his shoulders. The truth had finally been spoken. There was no undoing it now, only the fragile, uncertain possibility of what came next. Time did not heal anything at first. It only stretched the pain thinner, spreading it across days that felt longer than they should have. After the truth was spoken, the ranch changed, not in its shape or routine, but in its silence. Clara moved through the house and landed like a guest who no longer knew where she was welcome. Silas gave her space, more than space, keeping his distance as if proximity itself might be another trespass. She worked less in the barn now and more along the far edges of the property, walking fences, tending to small repairs no one noticed. She needed movement. Stillness gave her too much room to think. Every memory she had ever questioned now returned with sharp clarity. The way her mother had avoided certain towns, the bitterness that sometimes crept into her voice when men of power were mentioned, the fear disguised as caution. Silas watched from afar, resisting the urge to explain himself further. He had already said too much and too little all at once. Words had come late to him his entire life. Now they felt dangerously insufficient. Maeve noticed everything. One evening, as Clara scrubbed her hands at the wash basin, Maeve stood beside her without speaking for a long while. Finally, she said, "You don't have to stay." Clara kept her eyes on the water. "I know, and you don't have to leave," Maeve added. That made Clara pause. She looked up, searching the older woman's face. "Do you believe him?" Maeve sighed. "I believe regret when I see it. Doesn't mean it fixes anything." Clara nodded. That was the truth she could live with. Days passed, then weeks. No demands were made of her. No expectations placed upon her beyond what she chose for herself. Slowly, reluctantly, Clara began to test the edges of this freedom. She rode one of the horses alone to the creek. She spent afternoons reading books Silas left intentionally on the table, pretending not to notice when they disappeared and were replaced with different ones the next day. One morning, she found a folded paper waiting for her at breakfast. It was a deed. Silas stood across the room, not approaching, not sitting. "It's yours," he said quietly. "The east pasture and the small house near the ridge. You can sell it, live there, leave with it, whatever you choose." Clara stared at the paper as if it might burn her. "Why?" "Because ownership was taken from you before you were old enough to understand what it meant." He replied, "This is mine to give back, not as a father, not as a husband, as a man trying not to repeat himself." Her throat tightened. She folded the paper slowly and set it down. "I don't want it like this." Silas nodded. "Then tell me how." She met his eyes, by choice, by time, by you accepting that I may never forgive you. I already have, he said. That was the first time she saw something in him soften. The town of Red Hollow did not forget easily. News traveled back, twisted and sharpened. Whispers reached Clara through passing hands and half-heard comments when supplies were delivered. Questions about why she still lived there, why Silas had not claimed what he paid for, why papers had been quietly returned unsigned. One afternoon, a delegation arrived. 2 elders and a man Clara recognized from her childhood, his eyes cold with familiarity. Silas met them at the gate. Clara watched from the porch as voices rose. Accusations followed, demands, suggestions cloaked as advice. She belongs to us, one elder said. Silas's voice did not rise. She belongs to herself. They laughed at that. Silas stepped forward, his presence heavy as stone. You sold a woman because she was inconvenient. You will not step foot on my land again. The man from her past sneered. You can't rewrite what's already been decided. Silas didn't blink. Watch me. He turned back only when they had left, their threats swallowed by distance. Clara stood frozen, heart pounding. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yes, he replied. I did. Something shifted then. Not forgiveness, not love, but recognition. He was no longer hiding behind silence. That night, Clara dreamed of her mother for the first time in years. Not as a shadow or a warning, but as a woman standing in open light, watching quietly. When Clara woke, her pillow was damp, but her chest felt lighter. Spring came slowly, grass thickened, calves were born. The ranch breathed again. Clara began riding with Silas, not behind him but beside him. They spoke cautiously at first, then more freely. He told her about the mistakes he had made that had nothing to do with her mother. She told him about nights spent hungry, about learning early how to disappear in plain sight. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Clara stopped her horse near the ridge. This is where I'll build, she said. Silas followed her gaze to the land below. I'll help. She shook her head gently. Not unless I ask. He smiled, small and sincere. Then I'll wait. Months later, the house stood finished. Not grand, not small, but hers. Clara moved into it with nothing but what she chose to carry. Silas did not attend the first night she slept there. Maeve did. You did well, Maeve said, standing in the doorway. Clara smiled. So did you. Life did not become simple. It became honest. Clara visited nearby towns, learned trade, made decisions without asking permission. Silas learned restraint, humility, presence. Sometimes they shared meals. Sometimes weeks passed without seeing each other. One night, during a storm that rattled the valley, Clara rode to the main house soaked and shaking. Silas opened the door without surprise. Stay, she said. He stepped aside. They sat by the fire, not touching, listening to rain hammer against the roof. Hours passed. I don't hate you, Clara said finally. I don't know if I ever did. Silas stared into the flames. I hate who I was. That's not enough, she said, but it's something. He nodded. When she left before dawn, nothing had been promised. Nothing had been taken. That was enough for now. Years later, Red Hollow would tell a different story. They would say the rich rancher was changed by the bride nobody wanted. They would say she softened him, redeemed him, saved him. Clara would know the truth. She had saved herself, and Silas Crow had finally learned that love, real love,